Just water for him tonight, my son told the waiter, before I could even open the menu. Then he laughed quietly and added, "Wine makes him confused lately." The table went silent for a second before everyone pretended not to hear it. I sat there, holding the menu in my hands, while the waiter avoided looking me in the eye. My son Brian always had a loud laugh, even as a kid, back when he still hugged me when I came home from work at the steel plant in Dayton, Ohio. Back before he started correcting me in front of people like I was some old dog wandering into traffic. His wife Claire smiled into her napkin like she was embarrassed for me. "Dad's been forgetting things," Brian added casually. "Doctor says we gotta keep an eye on him." I looked at him. "I never saw a doctor." He waved his hand fast. "You know what I mean." The waiter finally asked for my order directly, but Brian answered before I could speak again. "He'll have the chicken, soft vegetables if possible." Soft vegetables. Like I was 95 years old with no teeth left. Across the table, my granddaughter Emma kept staring at me. She was 16, smart girl, quiet like her grandmother used to be. She looked uncomfortable the whole time. I picked up the menu anyway and read every word slowly just to make a point. My eyes still worked fine. Better than Brian's probably. The restaurant was expensive, one of those downtown places with low lights and tiny portions. Brian had invited me there suddenly that afternoon. "Family dinner," he said. But something felt off from the minute I sat down. Claire kept checking her phone. Brian kept bringing up my age every 10 minutes. "You still driving, Dad? You remembering your medications? You figure out online banking yet?" Little comments, small cuts. Then the waiter brought wine for everyone except me. Brian actually thanked him. I felt heat crawling up my neck. Not anger exactly, something uglier. Shame maybe. You spend your whole life raising a boy, teaching him how to throw a baseball, how to shave, how to stand up straight after getting hit. And one day, he starts talking about you like you're not fully there anymore. My wife Ellen died 4 years ago. Since then, Brian started helping more, helping with paperwork, helping with bills, helping with my bank account. At first, it felt nice. Then it started feeling crowded. 3 months ago, he convinced me to add his name to one of my accounts in case of emergencies. Last month, he asked where I kept the house deed. 2 weeks ago, he started talking about assisted living facilities. I still cut my own grass, still cook my own breakfast, still remember every damn thing. The appetizers came out. Nobody talked much after that. I noticed Brian watching me every time I reached for something, like he was studying me. Then Claire leaned toward him and whispered something I barely caught. "She doesn't know he brought the papers?" Brian shook his head quickly when he noticed me looking. Papers. That word stayed in my head the rest of dinner. Then Emma suddenly spoke up. "Grandpa remembers more stuff than Dad does." The whole table froze. Brian forced a smile. "Sweetheart, nobody's attacking Grandpa." But Emma kept staring at him. "You said Grandma's ring was lost," she said quietly. "Grandpa told me yesterday you pawned it." Brian's face changed so fast it scared me. And that's when I realized this dinner wasn't about family at all. It was about something they thought I was too confused to notice. Emma's words hung over the table like smoke. Brian laughed first, but it sounded wrong, too quick. "Jesus, Emma," he muttered. "Don't start drama." Claire stared down into her wine glass. She wouldn't look at me. I looked at my granddaughter. "What ring?" Brian answered before she could. "She's confused. Your mother's ring is in storage." "No," Emma said quietly. "I saw the pawn slip in your truck." Brian's face went pale for half a second, then angry. "Enough." The waiter appeared at the worst possible moment carrying our meals. Nobody moved while he set plates down, He could feel something was happening. Everybody could. My chicken sat in front of me getting cold. I kept hearing one thing in my head. Papers. Claire had said papers. Brian suddenly smiled at me again, too friendly now. Dad, maybe we should head home after dinner. You're probably tired. There it was again. That careful voice people use with old folks when they're trying to manage them. I leaned back slowly. What papers? His eyes flickered. What? The papers Claire mentioned. Claire looked nervous immediately. I didn't mean... Brian cut her off. It's nothing legal stuff. Just planning ahead. Planning ahead. That phrase made my stomach tighten. My wife Ellen used to warn me about this kind of thing before she passed. Never sign anything when people rush you, she used to say. Brian picked up his fork like the conversation was over. Dad, eat before it gets cold. I didn't touch the plate. What papers? This time louder. People at nearby tables started glancing over. Brian's jaw tightened hard. I recognized that look from when he was 17 and lying straight to my face. Finally, he sighed. It's just power of attorney paperwork. Temporary stuff in case something happens. The room felt suddenly smaller. You already filled it out? We were going to discuss it tonight. Claire finally spoke softly. Brian thought it would be easier over dinner. Easier. Like this was some casual conversation between dessert and coffee. I looked around the table. Nobody looked surprised except Emma. That hurt worse than anything. They all knew. My own son had planned this dinner around getting control of my life, my bank accounts, my house, everything Ellen and I spent 48 years building together. Brian leaned toward me carefully. Dad, this isn't a big deal. It's protection. For who? He rubbed his forehead. You've been forgetting things. No, I haven't. You left your garage open last month because you borrowed my ladder. You called me twice one morning asking what day it was. I was checking what time Emma's concert started. His voice got sharper. Dad, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I felt everybody watching me now, waiting to see if I'd explode or crumble. That's the thing about humiliation. It makes you feel trapped inside your own skin. Then Brian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folder. Thick, already prepared, already signed on his side. He slid it slowly across the tablecloth toward me. We just need to make sure things are handled before they get worse. Before they get worse. Like I was already disappearing. My hand started shaking a little. Not from confusion, from rage. Emma whispered, Dad, stop. But Brian ignored her completely. He even pulled a pen from his pocket and placed it on top of the folder. Ready for me. Right there in the middle of the restaurant. Like he'd rehearsed the whole thing. And that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The signature line already had my name typed under it. And beside the folder was my checkbook. I stared at the checkbook so long, the words on the page started blurring together. My checkbook. The one I kept in the kitchen drawer under the phone book. I looked up slowly at Brian. You took this out of my house? He looked offended by the question. I borrowed it. Without asking me. Dad, relax. That word, relax. People only say that when they're already doing something wrong. Claire leaned forward fast. Nobody's trying to hurt you. But nobody at that table looked comfortable anymore. Even the waiter, hovering near the kitchen, kept glancing over. I picked up the folder. Power of attorney, financial authority, medical authority, property decisions. The pages shook a little in my hands while I flipped through them. Brian had tabs marking where I needed to sign, like he'd prepared for an elderly customer at a bank. You brought this to a restaurant? I said quietly. We didn't know how else to talk to you. I looked right at him then. You could have talked to me like I was your father." His face hardened immediately. "There it is," he muttered. "There what is? The guilt, the manipulation." I almost laughed from shock. "You think I'm manipulating you? You've been acting different for months," he snapped. "Paranoid, forgetful, defensive." Emma looked horrified. "Dad." "No," Brian said loudly. "I'm tired of pretending." Now nearby tables were fully listening. Claire whispered, "Brian, lower your voice." But he was rolling now. Years of something ugly finally coming out. "You forget appointments. You leave things on the stove. You mailed your electric bill twice." "I mailed it twice because they lost the first check." "You accused Claire of moving things in your house." "She did move things." Claire looked away instantly. That tiny movement told me more than words could. I felt cold all over suddenly. Not weak, not confused, cornered. I thought about the last 6 months. Brian insisting on helping with my online banking. Claire offering to organize Ellen's jewelry after the funeral. The missing cash I blamed on myself. The way they always wanted copies of things. Account numbers, passwords, paperwork. My chest tightened. "How long?" I asked quietly. Brian frowned. "What?" "How long have you been planning this?" Nobody answered. That was answer enough. Then Emma suddenly stood up. Her chair scraped loud across the floor. "You told Mom and me Grandpa wouldn't even understand the papers," she said, voice shaking. "You said he'd probably sign them without reading." Claire's eyes widened fast. "Emma, sit down." "No." Brian looked furious now. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I heard you." People were openly staring now. A couple near the window had completely stopped eating. I looked at my son, and for one awful second, I didn't recognize him. Not the little boy who used to sleep on my chest during thunderstorms. Not the teenager I bailed out after he wrecked my truck at 17. This was somebody else. Somebody watching me like an obstacle between him and something he wanted. Then his phone buzzed on the table. He grabbed it too late, but I saw the screen light up first. Bank transfer pending, and underneath it, my account number. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. I reached across the table and grabbed the phone before he could stop me. Brian lunged immediately. "Dad, give me that." But I was already reading. Transfer amount, $48,000. Scheduled for midnight. From my savings account to an account under Claire's name. For a second, the whole restaurant disappeared around me. All I could hear was Ellen's voice from years ago. "If people rush you around money, Walter, stop trusting the room." Then I looked up at my son, and he stopped pretending altogether. Brian's face changed the second I read the transfer amount. All the softness disappeared. "Give me the phone," he said through his teeth. I held it tighter. "You were stealing from me." Claire looked close to tears now. "Walter, please lower your voice. Don't call me Walter like we're co-workers in an office." People were fully watching us now. Forks stopped moving. Glasses halfway to mouths. Brian reached for the phone again. I pulled back. "It's not stealing," he hissed. "It's protecting assets before things get messy." Messy. You're unstable. That word hit me harder than anything else that night. Unstable, like I was some dangerous old man wandering around forgetting his own name. Emma looked sick. "Dad, stop." But Brian was too far gone now. "You think I don't see what's happening?" He snapped at me. "You're slipping. Everybody sees it except you." I balanced payroll for 400 union workers for 22 years. That was years ago. I still do my own taxes. "You almost backed into a mailbox last month." I stared at him. "That mailbox was already knocked over." Claire whispered, "Brian." "No, we're doing this now." He stood up suddenly and pulled more papers from the folder. Bank forms, property forms, even medical release documents, all prepared already, like this wasn't a conversation. It was an operation. You planned all this, I said quietly. We planned for reality. I looked at Claire then. How much debt are you two in? Neither answered. That told me enough. Brian rubbed both hands over his face hard. You have no idea what things cost now. So you decided to rob me. His voice exploded louder than I'd ever heard it. It's going to be mine eventually anyway. The whole restaurant went dead silent. Even the kitchen noise seemed to stop. And there it was, finally. The truth sitting naked on the table between the wine glasses and dirty plates. Mine eventually. Not concern, not protection, inheritance. Emma started crying quietly beside Claire. Brian noticed too late. His anger flickered into panic for a second. Emma. No, she whispered. Mom told you not to do this here. I looked at Claire slowly. Her eyes dropped immediately, so she knew exactly what tonight was. A setup, public pressure, humiliation. Get the old man cornered. Make him sign before he fully understands. My hands stopped shaking then. That's the strange thing about betrayal. At some point, the hurt burns away and leaves something colder behind. Calm. I handed Brian's phone back to him carefully. Then I picked up the folder one last time. Page after page of ways to erase me while I was still alive. I closed it gently. You know what your mother used to say about you? I asked. Brian blinked. She said when you were little, you cried any time another child touched your toys. He stared at me without speaking. I stood up slowly from the table. I defended you your whole life, I said, even when you didn't deserve it. Dad don't walk out like this. Why? Afraid I'll confuse myself on the drive home? His face flushed dark red. I reached for my coat calmly. Then the waiter appeared beside me quietly holding the leather bill folder. And without even thinking, Brian said the one thing that changed everything. Just give it to him, he muttered to the waiter. He still likes pretending he pays for things. The waiter hesitated. I looked down at the bill. Then I opened it, and what I saw there made my stomach drop harder than the transfer ever did. Because attached behind the dinner receipt was a printed copy of my bank statement. For a second I thought I was looking at the wrong paper. My checking account balance, my savings balance, recent withdrawals, retirement deposits, everything, printed out neatly behind the restaurant receipt like part of the dinner service. I looked up slowly at Brian. You brought my bank records to a restaurant. He immediately realized what he'd done. Dad. No, don't call me Dad right now. My voice came out low and flat. That scared him more than yelling would have. Claire stood up fast. Walter, please, let us explain. I held up the statement. You had access to all this? Brian rubbed his face hard. You added me to the account. For emergencies. And this is an emergency. His voice cracked that time. Not anger, fear, real fear. People nearby started pretending not to listen again, but nobody was eating anymore. I looked back at the papers. Then I saw another page clipped behind the statement. Property valuation. My house. Estimated resale value. $412,000. There were handwritten notes in the margin. Sell fast as is. My knees almost gave out. Ellen and I bought that house in 1981. We painted every room together. Marked Emma's height in the laundry room doorway every birthday. I buried our old dog Duke under the maple tree out back. And my son had turned it into a number on a sheet of paper. I looked at Brian again. You already planned to sell my house. We were trying to protect assets before Medicaid complications happened later. You talked about me like I was already dead. Claire started crying softly now. Real tears, but it was too late for tears. Then Brian made the mistake that finally shattered everything. He reached for the folder and said quietly, "You wouldn't even survive on your own another year anyway." Silence. Emma gasped like somebody slapped her. I felt something inside me crack clean in half. Not my heart. Something deeper. Trust, maybe. I stared at my son for a long moment. Then I opened the bill folder completely and looked at the total receipt again. $1,184.62. I nodded slowly. Then I raised my voice just enough for the nearby tables to hear. Interesting, I said calmly. You can't afford dinner, but you scheduled a $48,000 transfer from my savings tonight. Brian went white. Lower your voice. No. The waiter froze beside us. Claire whispered desperately, Walter, please. But I was done protecting them, done helping them hide themselves. I lifted the bank statement higher. My son told this restaurant I was confused, I said clearly. Meanwhile, he's transferring money out of my account at midnight. A woman at the next table actually covered her mouth. Brian stood up so fast, his chair slammed backward. You don't understand how bad things are. There it was again. The truth leaking out in pieces. How bad? I asked. Nobody answered. Then Emma did, quietly. They're losing the house. Brian spun toward her instantly. Emma shut up, but she kept crying. I heard them fighting. Mom said Grandpa was the only thing keeping us from bankruptcy. The room felt ice cold. Claire sat back down hard like all the strength left her body at once. Brian looked trapped now, sweating, breathing hard, and suddenly I understood everything. The sudden family dinners, the fake concern, the doctor lies, the confusion jokes, the papers. They weren't trying to help me, they were trying to save themselves, using me, using Ellen's house, using my death before I was even gone. Then Brian looked me dead in the eyes and said the one thing I never thought I'd hear from my own son. You owe me after everything I sacrificed for this family. And that's when I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the letter from my attorney. I held the letter in my hand and looked at my son across that table. He looked exhausted now, angry, cornered, desperate, not like a son, like a man drowning. You owe me, he said again, quieter this time. You know how hard things have been. I unfolded the letter carefully. My attorney's name sat across the top in dark blue ink. Brian's eyes locked onto it immediately. What is that? I went to see a lawyer 3 weeks ago. Claire stopped crying. Emma looked back and forth between us like she already knew something terrible was coming. I kept my voice calm. After you asked about the house deed, after you started asking where I kept my account information, I got uncomfortable. Brian shook his head fast. Dad, don't do this here. You already did this here. The restaurant stayed silent around us. I pulled out the second page and laid it beside the bill. Everything changed 3 weeks ago, I said. My accounts, my will, the house, all of it. Brian stared at me blankly. Then realization started creeping across his face, slow, ugly. What did you do? I removed your access from every account, Claire whispered. Oh my God. The transfer you scheduled tonight won't clear. Brian grabbed his phone immediately with shaking hands. His face lost all color as he stared at the screen. Declined. Frozen account permissions. He looked physically sick. You froze the account? No, I said quietly. I protected it. His breathing got heavier. You had no right. No right? I almost smiled at that. You brought paperwork to strip me of my life in a restaurant. People nearby were openly staring now. Nobody cared anymore about pretending not to. Then I slid the attorney's letter closer to him. There's more. Brian read the first paragraph, then the second, and suddenly his hands started trembling. Claire reached for the paper. What is it? But he couldn't answer. I did it for him. The house goes into trust when I die. Claire looked confused. Okay. It can't be sold for debt collection. Brian closed his eyes. I continued. And neither of you control it. Emma wiped tears from her face slowly. Who does? She whispered. I looked at her. You. Brian's head snapped up instantly. What? The trust transfers directly to Emma. Claire looked stunned. Emma looked horrified. I folded my hands together calmly. You called me confused for 6 months, I said. Meanwhile, your daughter was the only honest person in this family. Brian stood there, breathing hard like he might explode. You turned my daughter against me. No, I said softly. You did that yourself. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Brian suddenly slammed his fist against the table so hard the glasses jumped. You think this fixes anything? He shouted. You think giving everything to a teenager saves this family? The managers started moving toward us from across the restaurant. Claire grabbed Brian's arm. Stop! But he ripped it away. His face looked strange now. Red, wet-eyed, humiliated, like a little boy caught stealing. Then he looked at Emma and said something that made her flinch backward instantly. You don't deserve that house. Silence, absolute silence. Emma stared at her father like she didn't know him anymore. And honestly, neither did I. Brian realized too late what he'd just said. But it was already sitting there between all of us. Permanent, ugly, true. Then Emma stood up slowly, looked at me with tears running down her face, and walked past her father without touching him. If this story hit you hard, let me know in the comments what you would have done in his place. And if you believe family, trust, and dignity still matter, subscribe for more real emotional stories like this one.